So starting the test drive in the Land Cruiser iForce Max here, pretty quick getting up to speed as I would expect. An interesting feel though. I feel like the shifts, and this is just in the normal mode, were rather harsh, just pulling out of that parking lot there. So we'll see how that does down the road. I let it warm up for a little bit, but it might not be all the way where it wants to be. But this also only has 10-11 miles on it, so still not really broken in. I will say the ride quality here is not as rugged as I was expecting, which is, I guess, a good thing. But you can definitely tell it has some pull to it. And surprisingly pretty good sound acoustics in here as well. Now with it being a Land Cruiser, just how these tend to drive, I do feel like I have very good control of the SUV, just coming around corners and things of that nature. And it's not the V8 that we're used to in the older Land Cruisers, but it still, again, has some pickup to it. And one other thing I feel like is kind of slept on here is this Land Cruiser, although it feels just as big from the driver's seat, it's definitely, let me take that back. It doesn't feel as big from the driver's seat, but it's still as capable. It's not a huge V8 gas guzzling SUV that we're used to. This thing gets better city mileage than the outgoing Land Cruiser got highway mileage, so just keep that in mind. Of course, we have an 8-speed automatic as opposed to that outgoing 6-speed. Reliability, we'll just have to wait and see. Obviously, the older Land Cruisers have a history of, along with the Tundras, just going forever and just having to keep up with the maintenance, and just really easy to take care of. Now these have a bit more moving parts, obviously, with a hybrid setup, having a turbocharged 4-cylinder, just all the extra electronics that go with this. But again, I do think it's just as capable, depending on what you're using the vehicle for. Now I'm gonna put it in the sport mode. I'm gonna give it a slight pull here since no one's behind me. So again, just giving it a little something. It's quick. Like most of these turbocharged vehicles, that's why the turbocharger is there, but still, it's a nice feel of boost there. Now with this, again, being a Land Cruiser, the actual driving dynamics, they still feel rugged, they still feel controlled, but this does not feel as big as the outgoing Land Cruiser. And you might even say the same thing about the new Tundra. Now the new Tundra still has that girth to it, it still feels big, but the way that it drives, the way that it handles, feels more refined than the outgoing V8 Tundras. And obviously Toyota went a totally different direction with dropping this Land Cruiser as opposed to what they did with the new Tundra, but you still have turbocharged smaller engines as opposed to the big naturally aspirated V8s that were in the older ones. But one of the coolest things I think about the Land Cruiser, this one in particular with the iForce Max, is you get that big 2.4 kilowatt inverter system, so you can really use this for your camping needs if you want to. So I think it burns up, and I looked this up on Reddit, but it burns up about a gallon of gas an hour if you use that inverter to its capacity, which is really not bad. You use it more like a generator than anything. But again, just having that kind of almost solar system setup is really nice, where you're able to plug in a fridge, plug in a fan, something along those lines, as opposed to using just a regular inverter that you're used to having in your vehicle that runs off a 12 volt. And I mean, you can't even run a fan, really, an AC compressor for that matter, without shorting the breaker there. I'm gonna try to give this thing a nice pull, put into sport mode, getting on the interstate. Here we go. So really good pickup there. So we'll put in an eco now, and let's test out the safety suite here. So we have the system going, the lane centering, adaptive cruise, all of that. And a pretty nice system overall. Now I want to give one more thanks to John Roberts Toyota for allowing me to review this Land Cruiser today. I'll leave a link below in the description. And if you're looking to find the best price on something closer to home, click on that second link down below. It takes just a minute to fill out your information. I'll make sure the local dealers are fighting to get you the best price on whatever new vehicle you might be interested in. But this Land Cruiser here, it is, especially on the highway here, wind noise is just a tad intrusive. It is quite windy out, it's cold. But I mean, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing terrible. This is more of an off-road oriented vehicle again, so you don't expect it to have the sound acoustics of a Mercedes. But really liking all that you get in the package here. Having the Safety Sense 3.0, having the updated infotainment system, obviously, as opposed to the older Land Cruisers, your dual zone climate controls, and just still having something that feels like a Land Cruiser with your 4-wheel drive, all of your drive modes, your differential locks, and it's still extremely off-road capable, even though it's in a different package. The older Land Cruisers, they felt so much more capable because they were so rugged. All of the parts were big and burly and all of that, and this is just a different way of approaching the ultimate off-road experience. But then still being able to have something that's relatively practical for everyday usage. So I mean, if you're in the market for something like this, you're gonna get it. And I feel like you won't be disappointed if you do end up going with this Land Cruiser, even though it doesn't have a V8 engine anymore. I mean, even in eco mode, this thing pulls very nicely. And with all that being said, this will bring me to the end of my review of this 2025 Toyota Land Cruiser in the 1958 trim level.